Hey everyone. I've been seeing videos lately that show the circle of fifths, and the approach is just bizarre to me. For example, they're starting with the circle of fifths. They're starting with the actual circle, and they talk about the sharps and the order of sharps, and that you just have to memorize the order of sharps, F, C, G, D, A, E, B, and you just have to remember this, and then there's no basis for that. And for me, that's like teaching the multiplication table before you teach addition, or but before you tell that multiplication is just repeated addition, or you have no basis to start with, right? So what I want to do here in this video is talk about how to teach the circle of fifths and what are the different steps and milestones you can reach to make sure your student is understanding and fully grasping the concept and why it's important, rather than just this mystical tool that they just have to memorize. And the way I like to do it is to start with major scales, because the circle of fifths is all about the major, you could argue minor scales, but the major scale relationship. So starting with major scales. And you can take their whatever instrument they're learning. You could, if they're doing piano or violin or guitar, these are very simple instruments to start with. You can even throw all three tuning systems at them, or all three tuning setups at them, and show them that they're all related, that it doesn't matter what instrument you play as. Step number one is that everything is the same. Piano and guitar, or piano and violin, and therefore all the string instruments, as well as guitar. And you could even go into the brass instruments, reed instruments, whatever you want to do. That everything is the same, right? The distance between one note to another note, like this, the C to C sharp, or this C to C to D flat here, these are all the same, right? It doesn't matter what system you're using. They just work, right? So all music systems are the same. And then what I would start doing is show them what a major scale is. You could start with whole steps and half steps, right? Like you tell them, okay, this is a half step, this is a whole step, that kind of thing. You get through the basic stuff. Whole steps and half steps. You could do that, and then finally go on to, I can't do three. Instead of going on to talking about the circle right away, you go on to what is a major scale, right? Major scale. And you talk about the major scale being the whole step, half step pattern. Whole, half, whole, half. And so from a basic standpoint, you're doing small little building blocks. This is very easy to see this. You could say, well, okay, you just go up in steps in order. And here you go in order. And here is the same thing as the violin fretboard. They all go up in the same way. Then you talk about whole steps and half steps. The distance between here and here is a half step, just like the distance between here and here, or here and here is a half step. Then you talk about whole steps. Okay, you skip one for a whole step. You skip one for a whole step. And then you talk about the major scale, and then you start making major scales. You tell them what this is, and then you start making major scales. Make major scales, right? Make major scales. And so you can start on, it doesn't really matter where you start. You could start on A if you really wanted to. You could even start on C if you're afraid of sharps and flats right at the beginning, to teach your student that. It doesn't matter where you start. Or if you're really ambitious, you let them choose where they want to start. Let's say they want to start with A, which is kind of ambitious because you have three sharps, right? So you talk about this and you say, okay, now you go up a whole step and you do A to B, okay, A to B. And you can look on any system, it doesn't matter. You can go A and then, okay, well, whole step up from that is B, right? You let them use their whatever crutch they need, because I don't think a beginning student will have this memorized, right? And if they do have it memorized, all the power to them. If they don't, that's okay. You let them do what they need to do, right? So you got your whole step here, and then you need another whole step. Now they're going to say this note here. They're going to go up here, right? Because you got your whole step and whole step. And then you say, well, and they say, well, what do we call it? Do we call it C sharp or D flat? And you say, that's an interesting question. We already have A, we already have B. What letter should come next? And the answer is C. Okay, cool. We need a C sharp, right? It would not make sense to go A, B, D flat because you're skipping the C. And then you need a half step, and your next note is a D, right? And it would not make sense to have two Ds and no C, right? So one A, one B, one C, even though it's a C sharp, and then a D. You keep going and you get the normal A major scale, right? And you get the F sharp and the G sharp and that kind of thing, right? And you could end there. I like to put A on the end, but I mean, it doesn't really matter, especially it might get confusing later, but that's okay. Okay, so then after that, you say, okay, now choose another one, and they go like whatever, and they choose, I don't know, F, and they go F, G, A, and then they get the same problem here. They got A sharp or B flat, and they're like, well, I already have an A. Okay, let's go B flat, right? And they just start making major scales, and you can let them do this on their own, and you just say, okay, C, D, E, F, and you say, okay, start anywhere and make all of them. And they say, well, what do you mean make all of them? And you say, well, you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different places to start. Make 12 major scales. Excuse me. So then they start making all the major scales. And then you could go in order or whatever makes them happy. D, E, F sharp. They just start listing them all, right? And I'm going to go through every single one. And I'm going to put the letter on the end just because. Just because. Okay, so we're going to go E, F sharp. And it doesn't matter what order they go in. I promise. It doesn't matter because we'll sort them later. A, B. Because even the circle of fifths doesn't have them in letter order. They have them in the circle of fifths order, right? So it doesn't matter where they go with this. You just start making major scales. And if you really want to, every time they make one, they just play it. So you, A. Missed my note. You can go up, you can go down. It doesn't matter. You have them play it. You can make an exercise out of it. You're just making major scales. And eventually, after like your fifth one, this becomes boringly simple. Where I've seen students that they memorize, they spend a lot of time, they think the circle of fifths is this amazing thing, and they start memorizing it, and they use it as a Rosetta Stone kind of thing, and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe you don't know this. But then you ask them, can you make a major scale? They're like, oh, hold on, let me go look at my circle of fifths. It doesn't make any sense that they can't make the major scale on their own without this tool. The tool is there as a crutch to memorize, but if you can't make the circle of fifths, and you don't know why it works, there's no point in using it without understanding the basis of this. Just like the multiplication table. If you don't know how the multiplication table works, why are you using it? You can memorize it, great, you score on your test, but you can't actually multiply, right? And so here, eventually, like, they get good enough. They don't even need to use anything, right? And then the other thing is you could have them go a little crazy here. So C sharp, of course, has like all the sharps and flats, right? So this is super simple. But give me a second here and I'll tell you what I mean by going a little crazy. G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, and then C sharp. Okay, so they can go a little crazy because they're going to do something maybe like, what's a good example? They're going to go G sharp, right? Or let's go a little bit crazier than that. Let's go D sharp major. D sharp major, right? So now they're going to talk about like this. They're going to say D sharp. Well, D sharp plus a whole step is going to be F. Well, okay, and then you start talking about double sharps, right? You start talking about, well, the normal sharps, then double sharps, right? Because you're going to need double sharps in this one. So D sharp goes to E, or D goes to E, right? So you need to call this an E. So you start saying, well, this is also technically E sharp. That's not too difficult, right? Because the sharp just means you add a note, okay? Add or go up a half step from there. The next one they're going to say is, well, what about, we're going to need this one now. You're going to go up a whole step and a whole step. And you say, well, we get there, and you can't call it G, right? They're like, well, yeah, we have to call it F, but what do we call it? And you say, well, there's F sharp. What do you think this is called F-wise? And then they might say double sharp, and you say, yeah, and you show them what a double sharp is. And you start getting into enharmonics. And double sharps and double flats, and even the concept of triple sharps and triple flats and quadruple and quintuple and sextuple, whatever you want to talk about. The concept is not difficult. You just go up more. You go down more, right? So you could talk about that, and then you explain, well, you're never really going to need a double sharp in a normal scale. You're never really going to see that. So instead of calling it D sharp, you can really ignore that. You could go on and say, well, we're going to have G sharp, A sharp, whatever. You can go on and on and on. C sharp. Where am I? C double sharp. I'm getting confused too. D sharp, right? So this is your scale. This would be what your scale is. And they say, yeah, cool. But then you say, well, technically, we like to use E flat instead. Because if you do E flat and you show them, well, if you do E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and D, and they work it out, you know, do whatever you want to get to this point. You show them this, and you're like, what looks easier to you? 3 flats or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sharps? What's easier, 9 sharps or 3 flats? And they say, well, the 3 flats looks a little bit easier. And you say, well, yeah, of course. So that's That's why this doesn't really exist. If you ever want to use D sharp major, you just use E flat instead. And they say, okay, cool. So then they put all their scales out. So what am I missing so far? So I got A, B, C. Let's do the white keys first. A, B, C, D, E, F. We're missing G. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. G, I'm just going to power through these. G, and this is not a teaching video to teach you how to learn the major, or to learn the circle of fifths on your own. This is to teach you how to teach others. And if you're a music teacher, this might be a better approach, in my mind at least. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm missing C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, and then you can go on. You would get C flat. I know we're missing D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. We're missing F sharp major, G sharp, A. I'm just going to do this and be lazy. C, D, E, and F. Oh, I missed my C flat. F sharp, E sharp, D sharp. There it is. C sharp. Skip the B, and then we got A sharp. Okay, and what else are we missing? We're missing all the flat keys. F. We got F. Okay, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. Parentheses, B flat. We got E flat. We're just going to go in order of circle of fifths right now. G, A. But you can imagine that your student is going to do this on their own without a certain order in mind. B flat, C, D, E flat. Let me scroll over because I think this is going to get cut off with my beautiful face. A, we're going to just go out of order a little bit. D, E flat, A, what? F, G flat, yeah, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, A flat, we got the A right there. A, B flat, just imagine your students going out of order. B, C, D, oops, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat, right? Yeah. Okay, what am I missing? G flat for sure. G flat, everything's flat except F. A, B, C, D, E, F, G flat. Okay, so they eventually have all their scales out, right? I might be missing one. Oh, I have E flat twice, right? But that's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 12, 13, 14, 15. We're missing one. A, B, C, D, E, F. We got C and C flat. We got B, E, A, D, G, C. This got to be all of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. These don't count. 15? There's 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, that's it. Okay. With the 3 duplicates. So then you can have them. So number 5, once they made all their major scales, number 5, find the pattern. And there's 2 patterns to look for. Find the patterns. 2 patterns. Number 1, or A, pattern letter A, sharps versus flats. And they start labeling. This is a sharp key. This is a flat key. This is a sharp key. Why are they sharps and flat keys? Obviously, because they have sharps and flats in them, right? This is a sharp key, sharp key, sharp key. Sure. This is a sharp key. This is a nothing key, neutral key. That's great. Flat key, sharp key, flat key, flat key, flat key, flat key, flat key, right? You just start labeling that way. Cool. Now take all your sharp keys and see if you can find something interesting about them. They say, well, how many, and then if they don't know, you can say, well, how many sharps are in each one? You say, oh, this is 1 sharp. Cool. How about this one? Oh, this has 6 sharps. You ignore the last one, right? 6 sharps. Great. This one has 3. This one has 2. This one has 4. This one has 5. And this one has 7. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Interesting, right? We have 1 of each one. And if you want to complete the pattern, you can say, well, what about C? And then, well, that's a 0 sharp key. Awesome. So then you say, well, C major is the first one. G major is the next one. You just go in order, right? C, G, D, A, E, B. F sharp, right? And C sharp. Then you say one more thing further. You say, okay, look, in each one, you have a new, you have a new sharp in each one, right? You have a new sharp. Weird, my colors aren't coming out right. Anyway, you have a new sharp in each one. In G major, you have F sharp, right? That is a weird color. One second, guys. I think there's some kind of, I think I know what the error is, but I'm not going to fix it right now. Okay, you got one sharp. You got one sharp, and it's going to be F sharp. Oops, F sharp in the key of G, right? And then in the key of D, what do you have? And you say, well, the sharps are F sharp and C sharp. Cool. In A, you have F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. And they start realizing the pattern is F, C, G, D. Now here, they're learning the pattern on their own, through their own discovery, right? You let them do the pieces themselves. You don't just say, here's the order of sharps, fat, cat, or F, C, G, D, A, E, B, right? You don't tell them this. You don't say, this is the order, this is the answer. You don't tell them that on lesson part 1. You let them figure it out on their own. You let them discover, you let them build, you let them make their own circle of fifths from scratch, from the basis of knowing nothing. Then they can start building their own understanding of this on a fundamental level. And they learn that this is the new sharp, and this is the new sharp, and this is the new sharp, and this is the new sharp, right? And with this, they can see the order of sharps on their own because they did the work, and they figured it out on their own. Then you say, cool, now that you've done the sharps, let's do flats. Let's do flats. So you take a look at the flat keys, and you can say, okay, we're going to start with C again because that's got 0. And then they say, okay, well, and then they go through and they look at it and they say, well, F, it has 1 flat. Cool. And it's B flat. And they start figuring this out, right? And then here we go, B flat. Let me do it this way. F had 1 flat and it's B flat, right? And then B flat major has 2 flats and it's B and E flat. And they start seeing that, okay, you keep adding them. Okay, cool. This is going to be E flat and then 3, and they go A flat, 4, and they've D flat, 5, and that kind of thing. And then they start putting, okay, well, the new flat here is A flat, and then the new flat here is D flat, and the new flat here is G flat. They start going through on their own these circle of fifths without even making a circle. They just put them in order. And then you say, well, eventually you can loop around. Remember how we talked about how E flat and D sharp are the same? They say, sure. Sometimes you overlap, and eventually, like right here, you have these 2 keys that are the same, right? And they say, well, yeah, and they both have 6. This is a 6 and this is a 6, where I guess my 6 goes there. And this will have C flat, and finally get to C flat with 7, and F flat, okay. And you say, well, these 2 are the same, right? And these 2 are the same, and these 2 are the same. And they start saying, okay, well, it overlaps. And then you say, well, if you wanted to, you could go on. What would be the next one here? What do you think? And they look through the order here, and you can start seeing the pattern anyway. F, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, and you keep going around in the circle, right? So they say, well, it looks like all we're doing is adding a flat here, and then we just go around in the circle again. So the next one would be F flat, right? Great. What would be your new flat? And they say, well, if they could figure this out, well, you just put them in the order again, right? So B would be flatted again, and you get 8. And you can make this go on and on and on forever, right? Now it gets a little silly, like why would you ever go beyond this? But you could, right? And that would be the answer. And you can explain to your student, look, yes, you could go on forever, but we kind of stop there. The musician world, the music world, the musicians stop there. They don't use that one because, again, it doesn't make sense to have double sharps and double flats in your base key signature, in your base scale, right? So you could say, well, this is where we cap it. And this is the information that's used to make the circle of fifths. And they say, okay, cool. And you start showing them that now you can put this information into a circle. Let me move this over a little bit. Glorious. Okay, so now you can tell them from here, we're going to put C at the top. And you can say, look, we're going to put 12 because we got 12, exactly 12 notes. We can represent this on the circle with 12 different sections. And you could say, where would you start? And then they would say, well, I would start with C. Great. Why C? Because it's the neutral one that both of them share. Great. Now, we usually go, and you could say, usually musicians want to go this way for sharps and this way to flats. Right? And then all they do is plug everything in. So C goes to G, so G would go here. A would go, or D would go here, A would go here, and they just fill this in. Now they have all the information. Now they can say, okay, well, everything just goes here. And maybe they need the circle, maybe they just need the list. It's up to them at this point, right? And you just say, well, this is how that works. And you say, okay, well, now put the flats in. They say, okay, cool, that's easy. F, B flat, E flat. And these are the scales, and they know what notes go in them because they've already memorized this. And you could say, look, the order of sharps is that, the order of flats is that, and they could make up their own mnemonic. If they can't make that up, if your student is like, well, I don't know, you can suggest one. I always suggest the one I learned is fat cats go down alleys eating bananas. Fat cats go down alleys. I'll write this out because this is fun. Fat cats go down alleys. So if you don't have a mnemonic, then you could use this one, go down alleys. There's a million of them. I know some of you are shouting at your screens right now saying, oh, I don't use that one, I use this one. Or I don't use bananas, I use bowling balls, or something, whatever you want to talk about, or something. Eating bananas. Bananas. Okay, I can write that word. And okay, so then the other one is the one I learned is bead, just B-E-A-D, and then gum candy fruit. Gum candy fruit for the order of flats. If you want, you could use like greatest common factor is the other one for, especially because we talked about math earlier in the lesson. But you could use these. You could tell them these, or they could make up their own. If they make up their own, they're going to memorize it easier. If you're going to make up one for them, they might learn it and they might say, oh, okay, and then they'll forget unless you tell them 6 more times. For example, the modes. Many of you watching this video should know the modes. The modes are Ionic, Dorian, that kind of thing, right? So, but the mnemonic I learned was, I don't particularly like modes a lot. Okay, so I learned that one. So, I don't particularly like modes a lot. And then you got Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Lydian. Very easy, right? Let me put this back. I had a student, I taught him this, and he said, okay, I'll make up my own. I said, great. And he said, in Detroit, people like my awesome lakes. Which is fine, because he's memorized that, and he's not going to forget that ever. He knows that in his blood now. He probably doesn't remember mine. But he knows that one, and that's what makes it easier for a student to memorize. You make it personal. You make it personal. You have them do the work. You make it personal. Your last thing is make it personal. Last step. Make it personal. If you do this, your student's going to thank you for it. I'm running out of room on this side, so I'll move this over. Your student's going to love you for it. Your student's going to say, thank you for letting me do this on my own. Make it personal. They're going to say, I've looked at the circle of fifths before, but I've never understood how it works or why it works or what the purpose of it is. And you say, it's just an organizational tool. They're like, and then at the end, they say, well, I don't really need this. I understand how to make it and the concept and everything. I've done the work. This is like a beautiful picture and all. But I already understand the concept. And by the time they get here, they might not even need the tool because they understand it. But learning how to make the tool in itself is the journey, and through the journey, you're actually learning and teaching and understanding more than just, oh, here's some notes and memorize it. So I implore you to teach your students this way. Have them go through, one more time, let's go through what we've done. You have them look at their fretboard or their keyboard or something. You have them make their major scales after explaining what whole steps and half steps are. Then they put them in order. And then after putting them in order, they go through and they put them in the circle. And you could draw the circle for them or have them draw a circle, whatever. Make it personal, though. And then from here, where do you go from here? You start talking about minor scales. You start well, and then here, of course, you're telling them, oh, this has F sharp. What sharps go in it? And they're like, well, this has F sharp. Okay, we're going to put C sharp. And they could write F sharp again if they want, but just like all the new ones. They might understand at this point, oh, okay, everything beyond this point going this way, or they're going to have the F sharp in it. So this is going to have an F sharp, this is going to have an F sharp. And so this is going to have F sharp, this is going to have this F and C, this is going to have FC and something else, FC and something else, and something else, that kind of thing. They might understand that by now, and you can enforce that. But by doing the work, they will understand it and thank you and be a better student because of it, because you'll be a better teacher. So my challenge for you is to teach them this way. Don't have them memorize like all the other videos are showing. Don't have them just memorize random things. Have them figure out the system. Have them work it out and understand at a fundamental level why it's working, and see if the progress of your student doesn't go up from there. Have a good day.